I wish we were together in Oakland tonight at the Studio One Arts Center, but I am so pleased that we can gather in this virtual space. Thanks to Casey and Sheila and Francois, who put this all together for us. We are so grateful and proud to be part of what they do. This evening, I'm speaking to you from the foothills of Orange County, where I live, the ancestral and unceded territories of the Tongva and Hashiman peoples. If we were gathered in the valley where some of us first met, home to our conference, we would be acknowledging our debt to the original people of that valley. For thousands of years, the Wasi, now called Washoe, lived there from snowmelt through summer. The Washoe still live in their ancestral lands today. We recognize and honor their history, traditions, and care. Tonight, I ask you to consider the history of the land where you are as well, and what that history means to you and to all of us in the present moment. That present moment includes the hard history we are living through now in so many places. This week, Atlanta, Georgia, the targeting of Asian women and the hate and the violence that is not new. Please join me in a moment of silence, but then after tonight, join me in taking action wherever you are. For 50 years, poets and writers have gathered in a Sierra Valley since 1969, when the community of writers was founded by novelists Blair, Fuller, and Oakley Hall. In those early years, poets worked alongside prose writers during the same week in a wonderful program directed by Bill Fox. When Galway Cannell became director of the poetry program, he developed a different vision. And it's Galway's vision that we celebrate tonight and that we celebrate in this book. Poets, Cannell believed, merited their own week and needed to use their time in the valley to generate new work. His model requires staff and participants to draft new poems each day. And tonight, you will hear some of those poems. I remember the mornings when many of them came through the office, trembling and raw with a new, fresh beauty and power. Some staff poets, like Bob Hass, who succeeded Cannell as director, along with Lucille Clifton, Brenda Hillman, Forrest Gander, Sharon Olds, and C.D. Wright, and many others, returned to the valley summer after summer. The participant poets who have spent a week or two or three or more include those who have gone on to publish and otherwise contribute to the literary arts. The alumni poets reading tonight all eventually served their home communities as poet laureates. We regret that one of them, Jennifer Swanton Brown, could not join us tonight, but we hope she can be a part of a future reading. We're proud of those poet laureates. Much of the work first drafted at the conference, forged in a week shaped around the workshop table and the dinner table, running the bases at the famous midweek poetry softball game, and on walks up Shirley Canyon and along the Truckee River and Lake Tahoe, has made its way into the world and now into this book, over 140 poems. Tonight, the poets will share their own poems and share those of others as well. And we hope in doing so, this will conjure the kind of community spirit that has distinguished what we have done in the Valley, that has allowed poets through the years to write their truths. This evening and this book are made possible by the support of so many, not just the poets you will hear tonight and the ones you will read later on, but by organizations such as our publisher, Heyday Books, the California State Library, and individuals who recognize that the literary arts are indispensable, including the hardworking board members and support staff of the community of writers who have helped to make this book and programs like this happen. This month, as we mark the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic, we so look forward to the day when we can meet again in that valley, under those skies and stars, near the waterfalls, and close to those trees and those rocks. But until then, we have evenings like this together. So thank you for being here. And now I am so pleased to introduce someone I first met in that valley when he came there as a participant at the end of the last century, and who has returned many times as teaching staff, Kazim Ali.
Hi, everybody. I am so glad to be here with you tonight, and I am so moved by being able to celebrate this incredible organization and family that have given us so much. The Hall family, the Hall Joneses, the Alvarez Tonkoviches too, these people tirelessly creating this space for us year after year after year. It's, I'm so grateful. You know, I became a poet in that valley. And it's a magical place. Anyone who's been there knows it. You can feel it, the magnetism of those rocks, the power that is gathered there. And honestly, Lisa, you know, I'm coming to you from San Diego, California, commonly called San Diego, California, anciently and historically Kumeyaay, unceded land of the Kumeyaay people. I think that as we as an organization and as people begin to contend with the legacy, the colonial legacy of the occupation of indigenous lands, as we begin to remediate, I cannot but imagine that the spiritual power of that land will grow even more. So I want to read to you a poem that I wrote in the valley itself. It's to my dear friend, C.D. Wright. And we were on our way to the Hall's house, to Oakley and Barbara's house for the party. And we got lost. And of course, as you know, if you have been to the valley, your phone does not help you. So CD was looking at the directions that were given and telling me where to turn. You know, this poem is called The Failure of Navigation in the Valley. No body is fixed in position. No one can be known. Still, I am read by satellites, my tendencies extrapolated. In the mountains, I have no GPS. I don't know where to go. There are those trees, their leaves flicker like little jewels, a whole bucket full. Darkness stares back at you. Are you even human anymore? I close the curtains at night, not because I think others will see in, turn left there, but so I do not see the reflection that is pure dark. I am not afraid of anything. Oh, is that so? Citizen, bear, do this place not belong to you? Unseen, I wander through the thorny place of what I know. No, that ain't it. No fear can be new, can be none. Fuck, how do you spell it? I held a heavy jade pendant in my hand once, not in this valley, in another, in the range of limited human experience. How many places are there really? I don't even have to look at the earth anymore. I just have to listen. Now, that hillbilly whisper guides me which way to turn, how far up the turn is, drawling like moonshine. Well, Kazim, we're really off the grid now. Making wild prayers to the green dark. Which kind do you mean? What? Moonshine? Grid? Prayers? Or dark? Does it matter? It matters. Thank God we thought of having her record this voice. Every kind. So that's from my CD Wright. I wrote poems in the Valley. Every time I wrote poems in the Valley, I had a book coming out in the fall, and I would write poems in the Valley that I would then send and cram into the books at the very, very end. And so that's one of them. And I always remember the vision, Galway's vision that Bob always quotes at that party at Oakley and Barbara's house at the end. He said, you know, we don't know whose poem is going to be important in 100 years. We don't know which one. So we got to make sure that poems get written. So I feel like the whole project of the community of writers is secretly this sort of gamble to the future. Like all of these endless poems, day after day, year after year, we're writing because one of them in 150 years is going to be critically important, but we don't know which one. So it's kind of amazing. I want to read to you a poem in honor of this, in honor, I don't know, in recognition and contending with, in interrogating this incredibly challenging week that we're having, this terrible moment of violence in Atlanta, which is again and again and again, over and over again, you know, until we have the courage and the power and the strength to make the changes we need to make in this country to keep ourselves safe. So this is the poem that I wrote in the summer, in June of 2016. At the end of the month, I went into the Valley. Okay, and I wrote this poem. It's called Pulse. Pulse. To the sharp report in the dark, the season comes home. Long tongue sound between hand and arm, between mouth and flesh. Hold this moment. River, still, what if it was my life? To return after years to the same province of danger, an old town, you know, like the handle, the bump stock, the trigger. I want to return to the boat that bore me from the far shore decades ago. What I lived in those languages, I forgot the places I left that I want to return to. Were we seen? Were we spoken? Were all the wolves baying? Met at the edge of the bright darkness of rain? Time cannot fulfill its promise to splinter, return, or slow. Vow this wheel, this we will, this wheel we even wean. We in the world would wool the low vow fold, worn low at the hip, to be a solid soldier who soiled his soul for the chance to be the first to aim, first to fire, to fly. In the crosshairs, I am no heir to oar, to hold. I am on both sides of the gun, told as sound or cost, one that never ends and one never returns. Any embrace is the first error in meaning slope, wrought by thought that one could reach another, touch his shape, known in two genders, like Orlando, whose tongue newly woke to pronounce any word for God or man means to enter violence's fold. No oath sworn to save, no salvation, no salve, no valor, no ovation, no nation. And I'm going to read two last poems that are both from the anthology. And before I go, I just want to thank all of you. I'm so looking forward to hearing the other poets who are reading. And I also want to tell all of you that this conference is the little engine that could, you know, so we have to support and support the organization, but also provide for folks to come, because it costs money. And I hope that you will, if you have something that you'll give, even if it's a little bit, but the scholarship funding is like whatever you can throw in there, however small, please do that. I'm going to read a poem by Cleopatra Mathis from the anthology, the wonderful and brilliant Cleopatra Mathis. It's called After Persephone. Heaven got sweeter, its paperweight curve, star crazy at its purple center. She had found a god, a weapon in the works. something I hadn't noticed in the field, fought out of the layers and took her. I tore away land's every color, withered the smallest grasses. Every heartbeat went blank. I dismantled the ticking. They only say what I took, not what I gave. Roots and strong light, glory in the single shoot, green currency of the just born, from the irredeemable, the buried. This is how a self gets made. Remember that darkness contained the seed, sealed in the swollen red globe. Hell had to pay. And I'm going to close, as Lisa mentioned, I've been teaching at the Valley since I think 2010 is the first time I went back. And I've been back, I think 4 times since then. And then this summer I'll be back. So please come and join us conceptually. I think even conceptually, listen, even if we're on Zoom, the resonance of the place is you have to believe in the power of the place and the process. So we'll be in our separate localities, but we will still be feeling the generosity and the gift of the Valley. So I went as a participant in 1988, and this poem was read for the first time. This poem was written in the Valley, and I sat next to Lucille Clifton, because of course I got there early so I could elbow everybody else out of the way. And I sat next to her when she read this poem. It's called Jasper, Texas, 1998, for J. Bird, James Bird. I am a man's head hunched in the road. I was chosen to speak by the members of my body. The arm, as it pulled away, pointed toward me. The hand opened once and was gone. Why and why and why should I call a white man brother? Who is the human in this place? The thing that is dragged or the dragger? What does my daughter say? The sun is a blister overhead. If I were alive, I could not bear it. The townsfolk sing, "We shall overcome," while hope bleeds slowly from my mouth into the dirt that covers us all. I am done with this dust. I am done. That's Lucille Clifton. Thank you for being with me today. And I'm really happy to be introducing next Arlene Biala.
Wow, Kazim, Maraming Salamat. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful, beautiful words, and of course, the amazing work of Lucille and CD. I'm sure they're listening. I'm sure they're listening. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much to Brett and to Lisa and everybody at the community for making this happen. It's a lot of work, hurting not just cats, but like wet cats probably into one blanket. So salamat again for that. I will be reading one poem that was written the first time I was able to be a participant in 2002. And then I'm going to read a piece by Yusuf. So a little bit about that. I was in 2002, I was 5 months pregnant when I attended as a participant. And I completely remember the moment where it was like the big celebrity moment that I had. It was after dinner and I was walking down through the hallway of the lodge, and who is coming my way but Lucille, Yusuf, and Lee Young Lee. It was the year they were there, along with Galway and Sharon. And I looked at them, I greeted them, and I touched my belly, and I told my child to be, yo, you're in the presence of greatness here. Let's go. And of course, they burst out laughing. And Lucille bent down a little bit towards my belly and she said, no, we are in the presence of greatness. And, I was done deal, right? Completely just, we know, most of us know that's how Lucille was. And, it was such an honor and blessing for me to be there. So thank you for keeping it going. And yes, support, because it costs money. A lot of artists and poets don't have money, so we need to support folks to get into this great place of creation. This poem I'm going to read in the anthology was written in one of Yusef's workshops, and it's dedicated to my mother-in-law, born and raised in Hawaii. Ala Moana Beach Park, 1944. Her hands are sticky, her fingertips trickle juice. Strands from the mango seed are stuck between her teeth that toil to scrape the seed clean. She looks down at her legs darkened to lava rocks. She knows her mom will beat her when she gets home. Eyes closed, the smell of rain coming over the ko'olaus. She sucks on the seed again. This is her favorite part. After school, after running down the beach, clothes, backpack, slippers shed to sand, sitting in knee-deep water, Waikiki chaos behind her. This is where she savors the scavenger hunt. The ripe prize of the softened globe, the cups in her hand. Bite down to peel. Slurp slivers of fruit down her throat, she flings the strips of skin to watch them float away like lost paddle boats. Beyond the reef, she whispers, and wonders how far she can swim. Maybe out to the point where the surfers shout and slide, drop from the lip of a 20-foot wave, or how far she can fly, soaring over the cemetery in Punchbowl Crater. Hello, Grandma Sakamoto. Aloha, Papa John. But it's time for her to go, to circle back Makai. She waits for a sign, smells burnt stalks of cane. She doesn't hear the hum of fighter planes slipping by. And that was her experience when the planes were coming through Midway. Okay, so this poem by Yusef Kamanyaka, who was just incredible. So I want to thank him for the time we shared there and for just being such a badass poet. It's called Anodyne. I love how it swells into a temple where it is held prisoner, where the god of blame resides. I love slopes and peaks, the secret paths that make me selfish. I love my crooked feet shaped by vanity and work shoes made to outlast belief. The hardness coupling milk it can't fashion. I love the lips, salt and honeycomb on the tongue, the hair holding off rain and snow, the white moons on my fingernails. I love how everyone begs blood into song and prayer inside an egg. A ghost hums through my bones like Pan's midnight flute, shaping internal laws beside a troubled river. I love this body, made to weather the storm in the brain, raised out of the deep smell of fish and water hyacinth, out of rapture and the first regret. I love my big hands. I love it clear down to the soft, quick motor of each breath, the liver's 10 kinds of desire and the kidney's lust for sugar. The skin, the sack of dung and joy, the spleen floating like a compass needle inside nighttime, always divining West Africa's dusty horizon. I love the birthmark, posed like a fighting cock on my right shoulder blade. I love this body, this solo and ragtime jubilee behind the left nipple, because I know I was born to wear out at least 100 angels. That's Yusef. Thank you so much, everybody. It's great to be here with you. Let me give a warm shout out and welcome to the next poet, Blas Falconer.
Oh. Okay, I'm a little confused because it just said I unmuted. Well, anyway, I'm a host, so I'm a little confused by the messages that are popping up on my screen. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, good. What a pleasure this has been. It's so good. I've actually been on Zoom all day today, but this feels great to see all of these faces, these familiar faces. My experience with the community of writers, it's been so important to me. In 2012, I moved from Nashville, Tennessee to California. I didn't really know anybody. I was leaving a tenured position and just taking a chance with my husband and my 2 boys to come out to California. We flew out here, I think it was like June 21st, and at night. And the next morning, I got on another plane and flew out to the valley. And the reason why I'd come is I hadn't written for a very long time. Poetry, which was so important to me for decades, just somehow I just didn't feel connected to it anymore. And my dear friend Kazim said to me, "You need to go to the community of writers." And I thought, no, I have 2 young boys. I can't do this. He's like, "You need to go." And so I did. And so here I was. I didn't know anybody in California. I hadn't been writing, and I get there. And, you guys know how it is. I thought I wasn't going to write a poem. And like by the next morning, I had a poem. And the next day I had another one and another and another and another. And by the time I left, not only did I feel reconnected to poetry itself, but I had this group of friends and, on the West Coast who I would continue to get to know and whose poems I would continue to read for these years. So I am so grateful to you guys. I am convinced that I'm still writing today because of that week that I spent out there. I'm going to read 2 poems. The first one is one of my own, and it's called Obad. And I actually read it the second time I went to the community of writers, and I wrote it for Kazim's class. So I'm happy to read it now. Obad. Having already looked upon her in the bed where she slept or did not sleep now, day and night, and said all he'd come so far to tell her, he, the brute, crass and proud, stood before the large window, his back to them all, looking out onto the woods, and, without turning, raised his hand to the footsteps coming toward him, the arm reaching out, to the mouth about to speak and the words not yet uttered, to the keys, the watch, the wallet on the table, and the packed bag at the door, to the room, the house, the foundation on which it stood, and to the car idling in the street itself, to the grass in the field and the path leading to the pond where once he watched the beautiful girls splash in summer, and to the pond, both the water and the fish inside skimming the bottom, and to the great maples and the wind blowing through them, to the neighbors and theirs, on, stirring, eyes about to open, to the light spreading on their faces, the first deep breath of the day, and what joy or misery he supposed waited for them, as if to say, stop, stop, to the world, and it would. I've had such a great time reading these poems. I was saying earlier, before everybody else logged on to some of the other readers tonight, how just reading from this anthology, you feel the place. You can see it. It's almost as if you wrote the poems in some cases. You think, I remember that tree or the mountain in that light or that flower or whatever. image is being described, and even just the, I think Kazim was speaking to this, even the kind of just the heart and the spirit of the place and this community, which gives so much. You can hear it in the poems. And so it's such a great collection and such a pleasure to read. And so, it was such a kind of joy. I decided though to read, I decided to read C.D. Wright's poem, Obscurity and Isolation, which is such a great poem. And because she was part of my first workshop experience, I love her poems, but she was also had such a powerful impact on me when I went to write. So the poem is called Obscurity and Isolation. The left hand rests on the paper. The hand has entered the frame just above the elbow to reveal a half-rolled sleeve. The other hand is in its service. It holds a foggy glass up to a standing lamp. Motel furniture, motel paneling. From the outside, what light slips through the blind is gray, blue-gray. The phone rings. The hand, conditioned to pick up, hesitates, withdraws before the ringing finally breaks off. Now I get to introduce, where is she? The wonderful Molly Fisk.
Thank you so much. It is like we wrote all those poems and like we're there. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to read the book. It's wonderful to see you all. I began my adventures in the Valley in 1992, where I met my two writing partners. We worked together once a month for about 12 years, Forrest Hamer and Dan Bellum. And I also met their Fred Marchant, whose poem I'll read you in a minute. The second time I went, I met the love of my life, it turns out, who is no longer with us, but the poem that I'm reading you is about him, Brett's older brother, Tad, who had, if you haven't heard the story of Tad, he had had a brain injury. And when I met him 20 years after the brain injury, he had developed a fabulous and circuitous way of remembering things or telling stories. And now that I'm 65 and a half, it's incredibly useful to have learned some of his techniques, so that when I forget the name for noon, for instance, which I did the other day, I can kind of think hard and go, wait a minute, what would Tad say? It's like, oh, midnight in the daytime. So he is with me, as I'm sure he is with all of you who knew him in some way or another. This poem is called Kindness, and I wrote it in 1998, I think, in the Valley. Kindness. Halfway through our nap, the rain begins, hits the window, plashes through the double-needled pines, and splurts down onto the mule's ears and rain orchids, the clustered blue-faced penstemons, sinking without a trace into the granite soil. I roll gently out from under his arm and watch him sleeping the sleep of the sunburned, of the good sun, the wall primer and painter, the sleep of a man who is truly tired and knows someone loves him, since I unaccountably began to cry about it over lunch and couldn't stop. Watching him eat was suddenly too much for me, thinking how easily he could have died in that fall, how he wandered lonely in the wilderness of his own mind, never mind that people cared for him for so long, 20 years, long enough for me to get my second wind, to begin again to grow up, so that I recognized true love when I saw it, looked beyond the gnarled teeth and broken nose, the central longitudinal scar that runs his length from trachea to pubis, beyond the lost names and repeated stories, into kindness, so that when he began the steep climb out of his brain pan's maze, into stronger light. How lucky I was there at the top of the stairs, passing by. And here is Fred Marchant, fragments on the last night. What would slip by stands miraculously under the window, hidden in a sentence, a phrase, a ground fog lifting, or is it settling? In a gravel wash, on a pale mossy stalk of grape mullein, 2 goldfinches grip, and the stalk sways like a wand. The strip of shadow reminds me of breathing. There are those who think the origin of poetry is a deity. Others say it is only a part of the self, normally asleep. Some declare it is loss, that mortal shade we all plummet toward. Tonight, I think it is more like breathing. Like Whitman reciting poems to the surf, aligning his rhythms, like breathing. Like a day marked by love for yourself and at least one other, which is just like breathing, only a little harder. Thank you so much. Read the anthology from front to back and then read it from back to front. It's amazing. And here, speaking of amazing, is Robert Lipton, and he is with the Northern Lights.
Thank you. This is such a pleasure. I originally went to the Valley in 1994. It was awesome. There was like 7 guys and 6 of us were in the same dorm. And there was a house mother, a wonderful woman, and she put up with us. And I really appreciated that. And I've been there 3 times in total. And this poem I'm going to read here was written when I was there in 2003. And that was a really special time as well. So I will read that. And then I'm going to read a poem by Jerry Stern, who was there at that time too. And it's, although like most people probably, I'm a great fan of his work. I had never met him. And we actually became quite good friends after that. I think it's kind of a, there's a kind of a Dionysian grouch factor that I think we shared. And anyway, that was really wonderful. And so this is a poem. It's really that I wrote. It's called What the Poet Does, and it's very redolent of the Valley, at least how it used to be. I should say very quickly, I used to be a ski racer, and the Squaw Valley, I raced quite often with the Squaw Valley ski team. And that really was a different world than the poetry world I've been in for such a long time now. And it's a wonderful transformation. And it has a different sensibility because skiing oftentimes is how you use the mountain. And here it's more about how you are in a place, and it's pretty wonderful. What the Poet Does. It's not that he wants to be like Bukowski, looking for his teeth near the bar's toilet, vomiting in the geraniums, but he likes his drink, not to assuage the fear of death or the simple anxiety of flying. He likes the taste, doesn't have a problem with waking up to a headache the size of a small Italian city. It isn't overly bothered by being too drunk to find his way home on certain warm nights when anyone would want to be out under the stars. That one of those times was last night is neither here nor there. It was a little difficult to get to sleep, wedged between the empty aluminum beer barrels behind the ski lodge, but not different enough from lying awake in bed worrying about the placement of commas in the broken sestina, about his wife's miscarriage. It's not the miscarriage, her third, that was the problem, but the poetry implicit in these events. requiring such a difficult form. I understand this completely. The challenge is not the mourning or even the demands of some obscure piling on of lines or being soberly housed. In fact, he likes the taste and the stars, the roof of trees and the silence spread out around him like a hushed audience, readying him to begin. Thanks. And I'm going to read Jerry's poem in the anthology. It's short and it's called Steel Pier. I'd also like to shout out to Molly. Thanks for reading Fred's poem. Fred's a dear friend of mine too, and I was in Boston. A lovely man. We did many things together. So this is called Steel Pier. I think Jerry wrote it when he was there in 2003. I leaped through a ring of fire. I was white with red eyes. I never missed I love you in that metal tank. Plus, when it was dark, I wore white flannel pants with a perfect crease. Plus, went to hear Gene Krupa for a dime. I was living in ecstasy then. Okay, great. I am now going to introduce, I hope it's the right schedule. I'm more than honored to introduce Major Jackson.
Yeah,
And
Rob, hey, that was a beautiful reading. Sorry, I'll Casey here, quickly interjecting. We've got Danusha Laméris up next, and then me.
okay, I got a different thing. I'm sorry about that.
No worries. We're making it happen.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Robert. Beautiful reading. And I just have to say, I'm so surprised by how emotional I feel being here tonight. I just got surprisingly emotional hearing the stories about being together with other humans the way we used to be. That's already a lot. And thinking about Lucille. When I came to the Valley, I was a baby writer. I was just starting to write poems. And somehow Lucille every day at lunch would grab my arm before lunch. I'm trying to change my view so I can see all of you. I like to see the humans. Okay, so there we go. Hi, humans. And so there I was a baby writer. I didn't realize the greatness that was around me. I did not know what was happening. And Lucille would grab my arm and say, "What are you doing for lunch?" And I would say, "I don't know. What are you doing for lunch?" And she would say, "Come here." And she would take me to some private little spot in the cafeteria, and everything happened there. I don't know. I told her my life. She showed me photos.
Okay, I have to say, I have to interject here.
No.
This is the thing. No, but this is the thing that people do not understand about Lucille, because I think she was so legendary.
Yes.
But she wanted company. She wanted to hang out. She wanted to chat. And she didn't move around so fast. So if you hung around long enough, if you stayed in the room and waited, Lucille needed someone to walk with her to go wherever she needed to go, right? And then she would sit and hang out with you. The same thing happened to me when I first went there in 1988, you know?
I love this. I love this. And it's such a blessing to have been, maybe we were moving slowly too. Maybe
This is what when people would ask me, because I'd be at AWP hanging out with her and they would be like, "What? How are you getting to hang out with Lucille?" And I said, "You just gotta slow down, slow down."
Slow down. She just want to talk and be funny and share things. And she came to Santa Cruz maybe a year before, and that's where I am, maybe a year before she died. And same thing, we hung out. And it just brought me back to those times. And now it just feels so emotional thinking about her, because there is nobody like Lucille. There will never be anybody.
Nobody.
It's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen. She asked me, "Does your husband have a father?" I said, "What do you mean, does he have a father? People got a father, right?" And she said, "No, does he have a father?" And she was trying to get a girl to hook her up, is what I realized. Armando's dad is married. Anyway, so that's my story. I'm gonna try and read poems. So this one, Eve After, began, I don't know, Lucille was always talking to the Bible and as the Bible. And I think that's where I got sort of the impetus to write this one that began at the valley. Eve after. Did she know there was more to life than lions licking the furred ears of lambs, fruit trees dropping their fat bounty, the years droning on without argument? Too much quiet is never a good sign. Isn't there always something itching beneath the surface? But what could she say? The larder was full, and they were beautiful, their bodies new as the day they were made. Each morning, the same flowers broke through the rich soil. The birds sang again in perfect pitch. It was only at night, when they lay together in the dark, that it was almost palpable. The vague sadness unnamed, foolishness, betrayal. Call it what you will. What a relief to feel the weight fall into her palm, and after, not to pretend anymore that the terrible calm was paradise. So that's Eve After, the poem that I started there in that magical place. And I guess a poem really about leaving one life for another. You get cast out of the garden at some point, or try to get your way out of it into something else. And I think that my life turned a corner in Olympic Valley too. So anyway, I want to read a poem next from the anthology, this beautiful anthology, a poem by Toy Derricott called Not Forgotten. Read along in your hymnals, those who have them. I'm seeing some of them being flashed on the screen. And this is Toy's poem. I love the way black ants use their dead. They carry them off like warriors on their steel backs. They spend hours struggling, lifting, dragging. It is not grisly, as it would be for us, to carry them back to be eaten, so that every part will be of service. I think of my husband at his father's grave. The grass had closed over the headstone, and the name had disappeared. He took out his pocket knife and cut the grass away. He swept it with his handkerchief to make it clear. Is this the way we'll be forgotten? And he bent down over the grave and wept. So thank you. And thanks, Toy, for that beautiful poem. And next, it's my honor to welcome Major Jackson.
There we go. How's that? How's my volume? Good? Fantastic. I was taking notes because I don't know about you, but my memory is going, I want to remember these stories. That was phenomenal, utterly phenomenal to hear about Lucille and hear poems from Jerry and CD. My great honor was being invited to the Valley. And for years I'd gotten those brochures and dreamt. I might even apply a couple times. Or at least I want to believe that my young self did apply. And just like this evening, what happened that first year was something that was quite magical. And thank you, everyone who read tonight, for continuing that. And speaking of continuing, the summer of 2020 revealed the extent to which the community, its vision, its magic, could not have been squelched by even a global virus. I don't know, maybe the people who attended here, who are here tonight, can attest to that gorgeous continuity. And for that reason, I want to thank Lisa and Brett and Eva and everyone who somehow, on a drop of a notice, I don't know how you did it, but you brought us all together. And it was such an extraordinary, like I said, continuation of that significant, beautiful place and gathering. I was there with Brenda and Bob and Ada and Camille, Dungy and Matthews of Ruta. And our friendships deepened as a result. And I don't think it was the virus. I think it was the regard that we had for the work that we know that we were doing in the name of community of writers. And so I want to acknowledge them as well. Did any of you feel that sense of, like, right in the morning, just before poems are due, there was a kind of deep listening that was happening? I felt right before the poems were due in the box. And the listening that I heard was folks listening to their inner self, dredging up, finding the words. And in my case, I was also listening to the land and listening to the birds and knowing that we were all called to this moment to bear witness to the moment that we were living in. I know that some of us were probably either writing up to the last minute or revising and putting the finishing touches on what we had started the night before. In that spirit, I want to read a poem called Cries and Whispers that's in the anthology. And thank you everyone, the editors, for honoring this 50-year history. Cries and Whispers. And by the way, I had great anxiety because I would be up the night before that somehow I would sleep through a class. It's pretty crazy. Cries and Whispers. Each day I forget something. Yet happy I never forget to wake to the bright corollas of summer mornings. In the jury box of my bed, I listen to the counter arguments of finches and blue jays, cardinals, and the tufted titmouse. In the sharp judgment of the crow grow to sweet clamors. In my neighborhood, someone like me is sitting at a kitchen table taking down notes between bites of granola and gentle sips of oolong tea and recording the soap opera in the trees. The pen is her large antenna to the mysteries, which come in alternate currents of slapstick and calamity. She writes away her nights of emptiness and boredom. We'd be perfect in a Bergman film. Both of us entering into day, seeking the final appearance of things, bumping around like this. A delivery truck backs into a driveway, and the streets begin their excited breathing. Here is a poem by one of the guiding lights of the community of writers, who belongs to a great tradition of guiding lights in American poetry. And it's my pleasure to read this poem by Robert Haas called The Seventh Night. It was the seventh night, and he walked out to look at stars, chill in the air, sharp, not of summer, and he wondered if the geese on the lake felt it and grew restless, and if that was why in the late afternoon they had gathered at the bay's mouth and flown abruptly back and forth on the easy, swift bearing of the wings. It was high summer, and he was thinking of autumn under a shadowy tall pine, and of geese overhead on cold mornings and high clouds drifting. He regarded the stars in the cold dark. They were a long way off, and he decided, watching them blink, that compared to the distance between him and them, the outside looking in feeling was dancing cheek to cheek. And noticed then that she was there, a shadow between parked cars looking out across the valley where the half moon poured thin light down the pine ridge. She started when he approached her and then recognized him and smiled and said, "Hi, nightlight." And he said, "Hi, dreamer." And she said, "Hi, moonshine." And he said, "Hi, mortal splendor." And she said, "That's good." She thought for a while, scent of sage and yerba buena and the singing in the house. She took a new tack and said, "My father is a sad chair and I am the blind thumb's yearning." He said, "Who threw the jade swan in the boiling oatmeal?" Some of the others were coming out of the house saying goodbye, hugging each other. She said, the lion of grief paused. What she meant, what meat she is given. Cars starting up, one of the stagehands struggling to uproot the pine. He said, riffling the curse of possible regrets. She said, staggering tarts, a narcoleptic moon. Most of the others were gone. A few gathered to listen. The stagehands were lugging off the understory plants. 2 others were rolling up the mountain. It was clear that, though polite, they were impatient. He said, goodbye, last thing. She said, so long, apocalypse. Someone else said, time. But she said, the last boat left Xania in late afternoon. He said, goodbye, Moscow. Nights like sable, mornings like the word persimmon. She said, days, mailman drinks from a black well of reheated coffee in a cafe called Mom's on the outskirts of Durango. He said, that's good. And one of the stagehands stubbed his cigarette and said, okay, with the last of you folks to leave, if you can remember it, just put out the stars. Which they did. And the white light everywhere, and that silence was white paper.
Wow. Thank you to all the poets for being there then and being here now. I so love what we're able to do together. Thanks to Casey and Sheila and Francois and the Studio One staff, and to all of you who found your way here to us tonight. Please find your way to buying the book, ideally from our publisher Heyday or from your local independent bookshop. Information is available in the chat and on our website. Do keep writing your poems. Do keep reading poetry. Do keep finding your way to keep our communities safe. Like Danusha, I'm surprised at how emotional this evening has made me feel. This book has guided me through a very hard year, and I am grateful to all of you. And I like that. I like the hard feelings. They're good. So I want to close tonight with one last poem because, well, Lucille Clifton. This is the last poem that Lucille wrote in the Valley, one that so powerfully evokes the Valley and our community. And when I'm in the Valley, I put a copy of it on my desk and I look at it all summer long. It's a haiku. Over the mountains and under the stars, it is one hell of a ride. Ride on, everyone. Thank you so much. We love you. Take care. Thanks for being us. Thank you, Studio One. Thank all of you.